Now on this channel, I like to cover a wide variety of price ranges in the world of watch collecting because I think watches in general are something that can be such an aspirational pursuit. And no matter where you are in your journey, I think there's always something to strive for. But regardless of this, I'm also a strong believer that you don't have to necessarily spend a ton of money to get a fantastic watch. And in this video, we're going to look at a price range that I think presents some incredible value, and that is at $500, looking at some of the definitive watches in this price range. Now, in the past, we've looked at a wide variety of different price ranges. I wanna try to build some of the definitive options around $500, specifically between $450 and $550. So I wanna give myself a little bit of flexibility here because nothing perfectly is going to land 500 on the dot every single time. I'm gonna have different categories, so things like chronograph, dress watches, things of that sort that we're gonna go through. So probably at least 1 to 2 watches from each of those categories with some honorable mentions also mentioned when appropriate. I cannot mention everything here just because there are going to be so many watches. So I also will have an article down below looking at some of the best automatic watches for under $500 if you want to get lost even further in this subject. And I'm going to keep this pretty open for just both quartz and mechanical, really just looking at price range here more than anything else. Also, as an amazing announcement, TeddyBaldassarre.com just became an authorized dealer of Seiko watches. Some of you, I probably just assumed that, wait, Teddy, I thought you've been selling Seiko for a long time. No, that is not actually the case. We just launched the brand in the past few weeks. Really happy to finally have this done. You know, I think anyone that watches the channel knows that I am a huge proponent of the brand being a great starter for, say, a collection, or even for those that are farther down the rabbit hole that just want a great watch for the money. Seiko, wide variety of watches available now. On our site, you have the latest Seiko 5 sports models. You can also look at some great entry-level Presage options, the Prospects divers, looking at something like their Paddy collection, as well as the Monster, and then also looking at something that's a little more out there like the Seiko Arnie. Have 40 of some of my top picks that all curated by myself and the team, watches that I love from the brand. So definitely check out those as well. When you're talking about $500, really hard to beat Seiko in the price range, and they certainly will be on this list as well, but going to be looking at a wide variety of brands here. So for our categories here, we have 4 primary types, and then I also want to add on one additional kind of genre of watches, which is going to be microbrands. We'll kick it off with the video with that. Then we'll move into the everyday watch category. To follow, we'll move into chronographs, then dress watches, and then dive watches to close it all out. So to begin here, as I mentioned, I did want to look at microbrands. Now this could get crazy long if I wanted to mention everything, so I can't do that. So just as a warning here, if you want more microbrands, I have videos on the subject as well as a pretty comprehensive article looking at 50 brands in the micro category that I could also link to down below. I'm just gonna look at a few here just because I felt like it would be amiss to not mention some of the microbrands if you are interested. One thing I'll keep in mind, microbrands typically not the same brand equity associated, so if you're earlier on in your journey, I wouldn't probably go this route until you really understand your taste and what you want for your watch collection, but still some great positions of value if you are a collector and want something different. To start us off here, we have the Baltic MR01. So this is their latest type of dress watch, going to be a micro rotor movement. It is a Chinese made movement, but in terms of looks, finish, pretty hard to beat and an anomaly in the price range. This watch also going to kind of lend itself to be more conventional, traditional in its sizing if you like mid-20th century design and wearing dimensions, 36 millimeters, lug to lug of 44 millimeters, water resistance of 30 meters, and a price range right at the cutoff of $550. You also have this blasted textured effect to the dial surface, sub-seconds also being another element to this, but has a lot of characteristics that are going to, quite frankly, not be available from mainstream brands. Of course, you are getting a Chinese movement as a way to offer up a lot of these additional perks, but I think all of this get encapsulated into the end product, make this pretty compelling and an interesting option to look for. So next up, we have the Laurier Falcon. This is a watch that I think falls right in that range for the everyday category, using a 9 series Miyota caliber. These are also known for their more waffle textured dials, which I think are very much in alignment with those vintage types of Rolex Oyster models from from back in the day. So I think they look pretty well done for the price category. I've reviewed the Falcon 2 on the channel a couple years back. I think they're on generation 3 at the time of recording this video. I'm gonna showcase probably the Falcon 2 here because we have a lot more footage and that's what I can speak to more from personal experience. 36mm case, also thickness here of 11mm. The acrylic crystal is also going to be a defining characteristic. I think this allows it to lean even farther into that heritage look. Clearly a choice made on the aesthetics alone, and if you have some poly wash, we'll be able to buff out those scratches, no problem. 44mm lug to lug, water resistance of 100 meters, and again, that Miyota caliber on the inside, the 9 series, so the 4 hertz operation rather than the 3 hertz of the 8 series. For the dive category underneath the micro collection, we have the Notice Retrospect 3. So Notice, in terms of what they're really known for, is just kind of no nonsense, more sports oriented watches. The watches that I commonly associate with the brand are going to be their Retrospect Diver, and then also their sector dial watches as well. So those are 2 things that kind of spring to mind. I would say most of their designs are almost have this fusion of like traditional with futuristic in terms of what they're going for. Kind of has this more stark type of imposing nature to some of their case designs and their marker designs. This dive watch specifically has more recessed areas for lume and does have its own kind of distinct style. 42mm case, the lug to lug at 48mm, so this one's gonna wear probably closer to a 40.5mm case, still reasonably thick at 13mm. That's gonna be partially a responsibility of that NH35 Seiko caliber on the inside. Sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance, pretty solid, no nonsense dive watch for the price category from the micro side of things. And then for the larger wristed individuals, you have the Zelos Hammerhead. So this is more of their, it's almost kind of their turtle in a way for what they're trying to offer up. Has this more squared off case design, 44mm, compact lug to lug of 48mm, so it does wear like a 42 on wrist, but these are tanks, 15mm in thickness, 300 meters of water resistance. The lume is simply out of this world. You also are going to get some lume on different elements like the crown, and Zelos just does a phenomenal job with making sure that their lume really does pop. Simply put, a very rugged dive watch with its own distinct looks. So now moving from the micro brand category into chronographs. So chronographs are around $500. It is a category that's going to be dominated mostly by quartz options given the complexity of producing a mechanical chronograph for this amount of money. And one that springs to mind immediately is the Bulova Lunar Pilot. Now this is a watch that on the surface looks very much like the Speedmaster. Of course it does. But this one also has its own history and some remarkable things happening with this movement that makes it special. For one, 1971, David Scott, astronaut of the Apollo program, actually brought his Bulova Lunar Pilot, or his moon watch, as it was known at the time. It was actually a prototype. This is what this watch is based off of, wore it on the moon. And when coming back, this watch was sold at auction for, I believe, $1.5 million. So a pretty remarkable story, and considering one of the very few watches that was able to actually make the trip to the moon. But going through some of the specs of this watch, you have 45mm case, so it is on the larger end, so it's gonna wear pretty true to that size. I would say 44mm if I'm going to be exact. 13.5mm in thickness, sapphire crystal. But this watch just looks fantastic. Great watch to photograph, great watch on the wrist. But the number one thing that's special about this watch is it does have a high precision quartz movement on the inside. For one, it's going to give you that sweeping type of look with the second hand, not going to be the same level of sweep as some other mechanical options, but still does give you that mechanical look and upside, with also the additional benefit of getting quartz accuracy, but not typical quartz accuracy. You're talking about 8 times the oscillation rate of a typical quartz crystal. So this is a high frequency quartz movement, crazy accurate if you're talking about ranges of deviation a year on these movements. And to add the looks and the history alongside it, I think it makes it a pretty compelling option for $500. And then for 2 other options that I'll mention here as more honorable mentions, one will be with the Junghans Form C. This is a part of their Form collection, Ronda chronograph movement on the inside, but these just look the part. If you're looking for around 550 bucks, I mean, these are just great looking watches for the money. Sapphire crystal as well, very wearable case, 40mm with a 45.2mm lug to lug. This is gonna wear like a 39mm on wrist. Also very thin for a chronograph, 10.4mm. So a lot to like here with that one. And then you also will have the Tissot C-Star Chronograph. So if you want something with some chronograph looks, but also want some more outwardly sporty nature to it with some water resistance to boot, this is going to be a great option as well for you. Tissot is just a pillar in this range for delivering some incredible value, and this is just another example of that with some sporty upside in the process. So now for our next category, we have the everyday watch. This is a watch that can kind of do it all. It could be dressed up when it needs to, and of course can be dressed down appropriately. So for our first watch here, this is one that springs to mind immediately, and that is with the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. So with the different options available to you, you have to go with the mechanical if you are going to be strict about our budget at the beginning. We said $450 to $550. The automatic version comes a little bit more expensive than that if you want the 100 meters of water resistance, but the mechanicals are more traditional field watch, producing watches for the US military. This is what springs to mind immediately. You have the faux loomed markers on the dial, you have the lollipop counterweight on the second hand, mechanical manual wound caliber on the inside, and is going to be rather thin with a wide variety of dial options to choose from. 38 millimeter case, 9.5 millimeters thick. I think people overlook how thin these watches are. It's a great watch to wear on wrist. You almost forget that you have it on at times. 47 millimeters on that lug to lug, making this watch, I would say, wear closer to that of a 39 millimeter case, all things considered, with that extended longer lug length. Water resistance of 50 meters on here. Then you do again have that manual caliber on the inside from ETA. It's gonna have that extended power reserve of 80 hours and a sapphire crystal on the front. The only downside I would say about this watch legitimately is going to be the fact that some of the crystals are going to show some not so great reflections with certain dials, specifically on more of the darker dials, not as much on the white dials, for example. But these watches are simply phenomenal. If you want a field watch, do it all watch, Swiss watch, I would say for a lot of people that are into like heritage style brands, you like Goodyear welted boots, you like looking at maybe like a denim jacket and you wear nice denim, the Hamilton is something that's gonna be right up your alley. This is the watch to buy if you're that type of individual, and it can really simply do it all. For our next watch, we have the Seiko 5 Sports GMT. So the SSK 001, 003, and 005. So I can just imagine what Seiko probably felt when they released these things is, you know, when a baseball player, they hit the ball out of the park and they already know it's gone. They got the bat flip and everything. That's exactly what I would imagine Seiko is like, or at least what I thought they should feel like when they released these. These are an absolute home run knockout of a watch. Amazing release this year, and in terms of what they've allowed is, I think, people to almost even reframe what the attainable GMT market needs to look like from the mechanical watchmaking perspective. So 42.5 millimeter case, 13.6 millimeters in thickness, so pretty true to that general case size and wearing experience that you're gonna find from the Seiko 5 Sports collection. 100 meters of water resistance, automatic 4R34 caliber on the inside, mineral crystal, and a price range under $500. 3 different dial options to choose from. You have the more striking orange variation, and then you have 2 more conventional dial options for those that want for that more classic GMT type of experience with that bicolor bezel design. These watches are simply phenomenal, do it all, also have the Seiko 5 charm to go along with it, but a GMT movement from a mechanical watchmaking perspective under $500. These are new staples in the attainable watchmaking realm, and again, like I said, complete home run. And then for our last watch in the everyday category, and I don't even think this is an honorable mention as well, I think the everyday category has some incredible fixtures, and I was back and forth on which one to go for. Could you go for the PRX or could you go for, say, something like the Gentleman? Now the PRX is below at $375 if you're going for the quartz, and then it's above for the Powermatic version. So what really is the perfect watch in this range, if you're trying to stay in this range, is the Gentleman Quartz. So this comes in at $495, but I don't think you're making a compromise here, because I think the Gentleman has almost gotten lost with just the absolute enthusiasm that has been surrounding the PRX over the last couple of years since its release. The Gentleman is one that I think is probably the most versatile watch that Tissot makes. Primarily just because it is probably dressy enough, but it's also sporty enough with 100 meters of water resistance, and the quartz version is delivering a lot of the same that will come with the Powermatic version that extends out to closer to $700, $800, and you get this now with substantially less money. 40 millimeter case, 8.52 millimeters in thickness, lug to lug of 48 millimeters. Does wear pretty true to the size of 40 millimeters when factoring in that lug to lug. As I mentioned, 100 meters of water resistance, Swiss quartz caliber on the inside, sapphire crystal, and just a well-finished piece. You can put this on a strap, it will absolutely look the part and be a dress watch for you. You keep it on the bracelet or maybe put it on more of a kind of out there type of leather strap or even a nylon. I think it could work, and this could be more of a sportier watch for you. It can basically play both angles impressively well. And in terms from a fit and finish standpoint, I think the thing that makes this watch pop are going to be those markers on the dial. You just see the attention to detail with the facets on the indices. This is just simply a no nonsense, do the job watch. And if you're somebody with a $500 budget or just looking for that watch that can just do it all for you, I think that's why the gentleman simply works. Moving right along into the dress category, we have to look at Seiko. Now, Seiko in the Presage collection has so many watches to get lost in. You have the cocktail times, which typically are going to be ones that are recommended, but those typically are also going to be found cheaper than what we're looking at here for our price category of $450 to $550. So let's look at something else. Let's look at the SRP F53. This is more of a out there pick. Primarily what makes this watch special to me is its dial. This is one of the coolest dials that Seiko makes, under $1,000 in my opinion. It has kind of this frosted effect to it, metallic in its approach, but also has this light blue hue to it. It's an amazing combination. 41.7 millimeters on the case size, 11.5 millimeters on the thickness, but it's not going to wear to that full extent on the case size and diameter with that 47.3 millimeter lug to lug. I would say wears closer to a 40 millimeter watch. Not going to be a smaller case watch, but certainly wearable for a wide variety of wrists. 30 meters of water resistance, Seiko 4R35 movement on the inside, and also this one does have a sapphire crystal. This next pick is for those that love German watchmaking. They want to get into the dress category, say they strive to maybe own a Junghans or Nomos, or maybe are just not fully committed to going that route and don't want to spend all that money to get one, but still want a taste of what that world can offer them. That's where I look at Sternglass. And here we have the Ostate. So this is a newer model in the past year from the brand, but this watch does several things that I think were in alignment with that kind of persona that I described. 40 millimeter case, so pretty wearable here, 48 millimeter lug to lug. Rather thin though for its category at 8.5 millimeters. That's thanks to the automatic Miyota 9 series caliber on the inside. So again, 4 hertz rather than the 3 hertz version with also a tighter range of deviation for accuracy and a sapphire crystal on the front. I think this is probably one of their better positioned models. They are a German upstart brand in the past 5 years and have really surged in their production and new products. They recently also have been offering up more Sellita Swiss powered watches in their catalog, but if you're looking for something under $500, you like German watchmaking design, maybe don't have the budget for something like a Nomos, but want to get a taste of that to see if it's really your thing, this will give you the opportunity to get a taste of that without going crazy with your budget. So now to close out, we have the dive category. And then I think there's some, of course, fixtures here. I can't mention everything again as I'm going through this. I know some people are gonna say, why didn't you include this? Why didn't you include that? There are so many different watches to choose here that I can't mention everything. Now to start here, I wanna look at the Seiko Turtle. So this is a watch that's going to be known as a part of the Patty collection. It's classic red, blue, diver bezel configuration. For those that love the SKX and what it represented in the market, this is probably the best option for a successor to the SKX currently within Seiko's collection. You're also getting a 4R36 movement on the inside, 200 meters of water resistance. This is an ISO compliant dive watch, which of course is going to fit that standard as you would expect from a watch with the PADI association. 46.9 millimeter lug to lug. So despite the 45 millimeter case, nowhere near that on the wrist. I would say even like a 41.5 to 42 millimeters. And I think even smaller wrists can pull this one off. 13.3 millimeters of thickness, so reasonable for that water resistance. But to me, this represents so much of classic Seiko DNA with what they're delivering for an end product. So this watch is right on the border, and you do have a wide variety that are going to go above within this collection. But here we have the Citizen ProMaster Diver, the Fugu model. So this is a watch that was released this year. It was unveiled with, I would say, some mixed reactions because so many people are accustomed to getting those JDM models from Citizen. Now bringing this into different markets, specifically the US, I think was big news for many that long to have these just be more available than having to go through just out of market types of sellers. It just makes it a lot easier to get your hands on. Despite these watches being designed in a way that are very Japanese, for lack of a better term, they're also kind of have this imposing type of nature with the markers and the case and what is being brought forth. They still are incredibly well done for the price category. And I think many people write off Citizen more than they should. People give the praise to Seiko, as I do all the time, but I think Citizen is overlooked quite a bit. The QC is typically really rock solid. The lume is always fantastic, and you get a wide variety of now options to choose from a mechanical perspective. For a long time, you were really looking at those eco-drive models that were right around that $200 to $300 price range. This now offers something up for mechanical for those that do want to get into the world of Citizen dive watches. 44mm case, 12.8mm thickness, also getting water resistance of 200 meters. Of course, these are ISO compliant dive watches, and an automatic Miyota 8204 caliber on the inside. And now for our final watch on this list here in the dive category, we have the Seiko Arnie SNJ 025. This watch, of course, became famous from Arnold Schwarzenegger wearing this in the movie Predator with that analog digital display. It also has that black plastic shroud along the outside that is kind of that defining characteristic that allows the silhouette to be so recognizable, perhaps loved by some, hated by others. You kind of have to decide where you land on this one. 47.8mm case size, the thickness is 13.8mm, lug to lug, 50.5mm, so not going to wear near to the extent as you're kind of seeing with the theme here with many of these Seiko watches. Water resistance 200 meters, and you have that analog and digital display. I have a full review on this one. This is a movement. The Seiko Quartz H851 has some tips and tricks, like the setting of this watch, how the analog and the digital display work together in tandem. There's more than meets the eye here with setting the time and how this watch works. It looks so 80s and retro, but it also has kind of this futuristic type of approach to how the tech works that it's kind of timeless in a way. I do enjoy this one despite it not being my typical thing. Would I personally wear one? No, I'm not the type of person that's gonna be able to pull this watch off, but I respect it for what it represents, and it's just another icon within Seiko's very mighty assembly of watches. But all right, guys, that is my video looking at some definitive watches for $500. I know that I was not able to include everything. I apologize for that. I don't want to be in front of the camera for hours at a time if I don't have to be for shooting one of these videos. So I will recommend checking out our article down below looking at some of the definitive automatic watches under $500. If you want more in this price category, we also have a video looking at some of the best quartz options on the market as well if you want more things on that side of the aisle. So totally will leave that up to you. I apologize if I had to leave one of your favorite watches off this list. I just had to make the cutoff somewhere. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. I really do appreciate that. It also is a great indication of what style of content you like to see, different price categories. So any encouragement there is just a way for us to judge what you guys want to see more of in the future. Also, in addition to that, definitely check out teddybaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. Every product on the site was hand curated by myself and the team to make sure that it was a watch that I would be happy with having on my wrist so that you could be happy with, shopping around and making sure that you're making the right purchase for you as an enthusiast. That was really the approach here. And I think what makes our shop so different compared to other shops all across the internet. You can buy a watch anywhere, but this was really done with the enthusiast in mind and what you guys, I think, ultimately want or are looking for, a quality watch for a solid price. In addition to that though, all of this content is ultimately supported by the selling of watches on our site. We're all self-funded. We don't have the brands pay us to make content. It really is through the selling of watches. So every purchase helps out content like this in the future. So really would appreciate and do appreciate all of you for supporting us both by watching and of course, checking out teddybaldassarre.com. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.